The sort of initial impetus for Nerve, or the inspiration, was coming from a lot of electronic music culture and dance culture, and JoJo sort of becoming obsessed with those beats, sort of started the band out of throwing parties in New York. So it really started as kind of like an underground party band where he would make these events and have DJs and people coming down and jamming. And eventually over the years it kind of solidified into a pretty stable lineup with some changes here and there over the years, but it's remained like a pretty loose and loosely structured organization, but very compact. We deal with all the logistics ourselves, and we like to be able to go anywhere and do as good of a show as possible.
So when we're touring, we usually bring with us an Allen & Heath Q24 console. That's Ethernet to the stage box on stage. What was the name of that?
AR2412.
Okay, AR2412. And then on stage that also connects to the musicians' personal mixes. We have 3 ME-1s on stage so they can make their own personal monitor mixes. Working with Nerve is a very interesting challenge to run front of house and the sort of interactive role I play with the band. Number one, the sounds that the band is searching for are quite unusual, and the sounds that John uses on the bass and the sounds that Jacob's using on the keyboards and JoJo's drum kit is a very unusual setup. So obviously the first challenge is trying to reproduce the sounds that they're creating and get them to carry over into an audience setting and make it exciting and fun, and hopefully, a lot of the time it should feel like a party or a dance club. So, those are some of the challenges, and then there's also the aesthetic challenge of trying to take music that's played by 3 live musicians and make it sound somewhat like an electronic music style while trying to keep this improvised nature and the spontaneity that happens on stage with 3 people. So part of my role is to really color up what they're doing and give the audience an experience that feels more like a record. And obviously I can't do that much live, I'm still dealing with an acoustic drum kit, but I can, do various dubs and change the sounds on the fly, and I feel like that's a really important part of the sound of the band, is to be able to give the audience an ever-changing experience sonically, which is very much an electronic music style rather than something like jazz, where it's a very static sonic experience. And the excitement is based on another form. So with that being said, John did a bunch of research. We started talking after a certain tour where we were dealing with a bunch of other consoles, and he started researching consoles and in-ear systems as well.
Yeah, I think it really started from the in-ears and looking for okay, we just have to find a solution for this. We would have 4-hour sound checks, 5-hour sound checks, and a lot of the stuff we do, both what Aaron does at front of house with the real-time manipulating and sampling. I mean, he didn't get into that, but he can grab anything we're doing and he can loop it and chop it up and spit it back at us. And we also are sending audio, we're sending the kick drum to a sidechain input on Jacob's keyboard so he can have real-time sidechaining or gating off the kick. And then we're also sending audio up to the stage to a delay that the drummer, JoJo, can control. So, it's not that complicated if you know what you're doing, but when you walk into a theater in Chengdu, China, and you try and explain to the house guy who doesn't even really know how to run the system, okay, well, it's cool, we need 2 of the auxes have to terminate in male XLRs on stage, and then we have to have, and you just get these blank looks, and we're just oh my God, we have to be self-contained, because what we do is not that difficult, but it's unusual, so that kind of led us, that and the wanting to go to all in-ears led us to okay, well, if we could just bring our own system and we could be totally self-contained, then, we could have 20-minute sound checks. And then, we kind of were doing research and found the QU, and also saw that it, was a direct recording interface, and we were well, now we can record every show too, because that was always something we had wished we could do due to the sort of improvised nature and the importance of the live experience. It was sort of wow, now we can actually, capture what we do in an incredible quality every night.
And I think it's kind of funny because originally the QU was going to be just a monitor desk for us.
Oh, yeah, originally we thought of just buying it as a monitor desk, and we were like, oh, well, let's try it out.
Yeah. And so the minute we were, and usually, originally Nerve and the previous front of house engineer who was very integral in the development of Nerve, he was very much an analog desk guy, and I come from an analog world as well. And usually I'm like, I never want to work on digital consoles. At the studio we work on Neves and SSLs, and that's where we live 90% of the time. But just the sheer practicality of having a digital console. And having a digital console that you can use the same console every night means that you find a way to get around it really quickly, and some of those limitations of not having every knob in front of you at every moment become a lesser issue, and you instead trade the convenience of having in-ear monitors, short sound checks, requalable, and being able to record all the time. All of a sudden it was like, this makes so much sense. We can take this console with us, and it's going to make our lives much easier.
The sound of the ME-1 is pretty amazing. I mean, usually with most digital or Ethernet-based Q systems or monitoring systems, usually the convenience is the only thing you gain from it. They usually sound pretty terrible. And we went out on a limb and a little bit of a risk when we bought these because we hadn't heard them, but all the specs on it and what you could do, it seemed kind of like a no-brainer. And I remember the first time I set it up in the studio, I was just listening, I was playing back some live tracks, I switched the QU24 into, playback mode, and was just setting it up, and I couldn't believe how good it sounded as a mixer. It was like, oh, this is gonna be great. I could hear the mics from a show recorded through the console, and I was like, oh, this is exactly what it's gonna sound like. And so that was the first thing that was probably, really exciting for us. It's not just that we're gonna be able to have custom mixes, but we're gonna have mixes that actually sound really nice. And then after that, I think just the flexibility of having access to 40 channels of audio and being able to build exactly what you need is just, pretty astounding. I mean, to have a 40-channel digital console that's this big is, kind of unheard of. And I think that's being able to set each one up for what each player needs has been the great thing. Like, JoJo has all of the drums, the different parts of the drum kit split out on different knobs, and then he's got all the keyboards on one knob, and Jacob has vice versa. He's got all his keyboards and his effects fanned out on the bottom 8, and so then he's got a lot more control over that, and I just turned them all down.